Alright, so The Last of Us TV show is finally here, and it's given us one of the best pilot episodes that I've seen in years. If you clicked on this video, you want to see a breakdown and probably my thoughts, and I know this video is a bit late, I just got back from vacation, but from here on out, every episode analysis and breakdown will be coming out the very next day after the premiere of the episode. No need to keep you waiting, you've probably seen a bunch of other people already cover this, but let's get into the episode. So right away, this opening scene tells us everything that we need to know about this adaptation. It's going to be different than the game, but all the changes are going to be in service to the story, and they're going to be good changes. We have these two scientists talking about infections, and one of them talks about how deadly a global pandemic can be. We, as audience members, well, we know how true this can be, but the other scientist talks about how fungal infections are much more dangerous. The interviewer cracks jokes and generally just does his job as an entertainer, but when the scientist continues talking about the funguses, or fungi, I'm not too sure, the tone gets a bit more serious, especially when he mentions how if the Earth gets a bit hotter, and the fungi would need to evolve. This opening tells us not only everything about this adaptation, but for new people to this universe, it tells them that this isn't going to be your typical zombie show. Perhaps the most important aspect of this scene is that the scientist tells us that there is no cure for this, and if the fungus takes over, then we, as a human race, we lose. Fans of the game know exactly where this is headed, but viewers of the show, well, you're in for a real treat. We get the main title sequence, which I won't go over for very long. I think it's fantastic. It's so very reminiscent of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. I'm so happy that Gustavo Santaolalla returned to do the music for the show and that they're using tracks from the game. The soundtrack was already a perfect 10 out of 10, so additional music is fine, but I'm just really so happy that they didn't change the music entirely. I also find it really funny that the only two cast members listed are Pedro and Bella. Like, I know that they're the focal point of the series, but they definitely could have added the supporting cast that are also in the episode. That's just a nitpick. That's really nothing wrong with just having Pedro and Bella there. You'll see that basically all of the so-called negative things I have to say about this episode are all just nitpicks. Next, I want to talk about the opening sequence of the episode, all of the prologue stuff. It's obviously great, and I know everybody has said that, but what I really want to go over is all the misdirections in this scene. There are so many not only misdirects to people who have played the game, but just for people who are fans of horror in general, and this scene is a masterclass of suspense. First off, we have just the character of Sarah in general. We spend our entire time with her as our point of view character, and it's really setting her up to be the main character. While us gamers know that this isn't the case, even first-time viewers know that this isn't the case too, because she's barely in any of the marketing or the trailers, so what happens to her? Well, it gives us a fantastic misdirect about how since Sarah goes into the city earlier in the episode, she got infected. I didn't even realize this until I was talking to my sister about the episode, and she said that she figured that Sarah was going to slowly die and Joel was going to have to kill her because she went into the city and got infected. So for first-time viewers, it leads you into this direction and then ends the same way the game did, but makes it all the more heartbreaking. She's also not infected due to going into the city. She's not infected at all, but I'll get into that in a little bit. There's the obvious misdirection of the car not hitting them like it did in the game, but the entire time leading up to it gives us plenty of other misdirects as well. There's the dog hitting the window, which in the game is the infected neighbor Jimmy, and then they go off the road into the open field. It's incredibly dark and it seems for a second that they're going to get stuck. These are all typical things that would happen in your standard horror zombie movie. A dark open field where your car gets stuck is just ripe for a zombie attack, but this doesn't happen, and it makes the scene all the more suspenseful. And like I mentioned, there's the misdirect of the car, only for it to really be the plane crash that knocks the car over. A lot of people had an issue with this change, and I don't really understand why. I want to be just as surprised as new viewers going into the show, and this plane crash was a really great addition in my opinion. There were a lot of really great changes in the episode, so I want to go over a few that really stuck out to me. First, there's the additional Marlene, Ellie, and Tess background info and scenes. Obviously in the game we only have Joel's point of view, so seeing what Ellie, Tess, and Marlene were going through a few hours before we meet them in the game was really cool, and it gives a good indication that the other characters we meet are going to be more fleshed out as well. And that's one of the main things I was excited about for the entire show. This episode also clarified Joel and Tess's relationship, more or less. In the game, it's certainly implied that Joel and Tess were romantically involved, or at least were at some point, but we never really see anything to indicate that. But in this episode, we see Tess climb into bed with him. And while that may not be much, it actually might be the only romantic thing we ever see between the two in the show, it certainly fleshes out both of these characters more, and I like that aspect. Now, the big change is the tendrils, and it's a phenomenal change. The game had scary points, and I have to admit the exclusion of spores certainly didn't land with me when I first heard about it, but these tendrils literally sent a shiver down my spine and added to the horror aspect of the show so much. I want more scenes like this for sure, and to learn more about these tendrils. This to me was the most exciting change to see on screen, and I think it lends itself to TV much better than the spores would have. The other great change in this episode, I don't even really know if this one counts, but this is my video so I'm going to add it in, was that this was one episode and not two. I heard that this episode was initially 2 different episodes, and I really don't know where the cutoff point would have been. Yes, this is a pretty long episode, but it's definitely better than having it be 2 standalone episodes. The pacing and where the episode leaves off is perfect and sets up the actual story of the show much better than if this episode were to end, say, right after Sarah's death or a few minutes after the 20 years later. And finally, I really liked the ending scene with Joel killing the Fedra guard. Having Joel know this guy and then flashing back to what he could have done for Sarah, showing us that Joel still has major PTSD from that moment, was a great change. Also, Joel takes the M4, so that's pretty cool. I really wish he did that in the game. But with the good changes also comes, I won't say bad changes because none of them are bad, but they certainly are a little weird. So let's continue our conversation about the ending scene. I really liked it, but there's an aspect that I do find to be a bit weird. In the Inside the Episode at the end with Craig Mazin, he says that Ellie looks at Joel and likes that he killed a guy to protect her, whereas in the game, Ellie is very shocked at this moment and doesn't necessarily like it. What exactly is this change for? What changes are in store for Ellie because of this difference in the story? Like I said, not a bad change, but as of right now, it's certainly a weird change, but I'm excited to see how it plays out down the road. Another big change I see people having a problem with is everything due and involving with Robert. Not having Joel torture him for information and then Tess kill him is certainly a weird change, but I think this change is more so to do with the pacing of the story and the episode itself. There's no need for all these shootouts to get Robert, so having Joel and Tess track down their car battery, which is another change I'll get to in a sec, I think actually works better for an episode of television. Now, going back to the very beginning of the episode, we're told that if the Earth was to get slightly warmer, then the cordyceps fungus could evolve and eventually attach onto humans. So why would this happen in 2003 and not 2023? The game's outbreak started in 2013, the same year that the game came out. So why couldn't the shows start in 2023 to keep with the times? Especially if they're saying that this outbreak can happen because of global warming, why not just have it in 2023 instead? This is one that I really don't understand, and maybe it's my only actual negative of the episode and the series itself, just because I don't understand it. Let's talk about Tommy. There's definitely a plethora of changes to and surrounding Tommy that I want to go over. First, there's the whole Tommy going to jail thing, which I don't think is too out of line for Tommy's character, even in the video game, and it's used as a reason to get Joel and Tommy together and Sarah alone at the start of the outbreak, so it makes sense in that regard, but I was really expecting this change in the plot to mean something more, like maybe Sarah was gonna get infected and Joel was gonna have to kill her, but it did seem just like a road bump so that way we could stay with Sarah's point of view longer. Just overall a weird change that didn't really add a lot to the episode in my opinion. There's also the fact that Tommy is a veteran, and this was really pointed out by the sticker on his truck. In the game universe, I could be wrong, but I don't think it's ever established that he was in the military. It certainly makes sense, but I don't think it's ever mentioned. But now in the show, it's certainly brought to our attention, which is an indication of one of two things. One, it's more plausible for the audience to see Tommy as a survivor if he was in the military, or two, this is setting up Tommy to be more authoritative or like a leader, different than how he was in the game. Could be a third reason too, those are just my guesses. And now this isn't about Tommy himself, but Joel trying to find Tommy, a huge change from the game that I don't see a lot of people talking about. How did they split up? When was this? How different is this going to play out than it did in the game? In the game, Joel stumbles upon Tommy by accident, but is Joel going to purposefully lead Ellie to Tommy or try to stray from the path so that way he can go to Tommy instead? Is there going to be some kind of internal conflict where Joel has to pick between Tommy or Ellie? This is a change I'm really excited for because it seems hugely different than the games, and there has to be a reason for it. Now, this is where the gamer in me comes out, and where I become like all the other hipsters who are hating on the show because it's not exactly like the game. And no, I'm not talking about Bella Ramsey as Ellie. I think that she did great, but I'm talking about some of the line delivery in the episode.
What are you doing?
Killing time.
Well, what am I supposed to do?
I am sure you will figure that out.
What are you doing?
Killing time.
What am I supposed to do?
I'm sure you'll figure that out.
To me, I really didn't like the reading of this line. It felt completely weird to me, and so I asked my sister and then I asked my girlfriend if they found it weird, and they haven't played the games at all, and they thought that it was completely fine. So this is really just me being over the top pretentious because it's not exactly like the game. I'm just so used to the game's version that the show's version rubbed me the wrong way. Again, this is so nitpicky, but a lot of the lines directly from the game felt this way to me. The ending scene explaining Ellie's bite, Sarah giving Joel the watch, yes sir ×3. These are all nitpicks, but coming from somebody who really does like the games, the lines sounded a bit off to me. Is this Pedro and Bella's fault? No, absolutely not. Is this my fault? Yeah, it kinda is. This show is an adaptation, and adaptations are going to be different. I always tell myself that, I always tell people that it's not going to be a one-to-one exact comparison. It's not going to be exactly alike, and I'm at fault because now I am my own biggest hypocrite. I think Pedro and Bella are absolutely killing it so far, but this is my review, so I just wanted to talk about that. Perhaps the most interesting thing to come from this episode is the flower theory. This is one I saw on Reddit a lot and subsequently a few other YouTube videos because I'm so late with mine, but this is new to the show, and for fans of the game, it stuck out like a sore thumb. Because amongst all the other changes I talked about in this episode, the flower theory has captivated me by far the most. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the running theory as to how the cordyceps fungus started spreading is due to infected flower from Jakarta, a country in Indonesia that produces a lot of the world's flour. Jakarta is the country they're talking about on the radio in the beginning of the episode, and there's a reason why Joel, Sarah, and Tommy aren't infected, and it all comes down to basically luck. They want to have pancakes in the morning, but there's no pancake mix. The neighbors offer them biscuits, but Joel declines because he's on Atkins, a low-carb diet, basically meaning he doesn't eat a lot of flour, among other things. Sarah goes to visit the Adlers later that day, but doesn't eat any cookies because they're raisin and not chocolate chip. Joel forgets to get a cake on the way home, so once again, no flour. But you know who does eat flour? Old Grandma, because Buddy Garrity is feeding her biscuits in the morning, so Old Grandma is the first infected person that we see. And it's a really great way to introduce the fungus because Old Grandma is literally like a lawn chair. She doesn't do anything, but this fungus wakes her right up. As the episodes go on, I'm sure we're going to learn a lot more about where the virus came from, and I'm very excited for more hints and clues, but this theory has a lot of traction and weight behind it. I'm sure the showrunners are actually a bit disappointed because they wanted it to be a mystery for longer, but who knows, maybe we're following right on their tracks and there's going to be other great theories presented in other episodes. Overall, this episode was fantastic. Sure, I have a few nitpicks of my own, but at the end of the day, they really are just nitpicks. I've been waiting for the show for a very long time, and this is truly everything I wanted it to be and more. I seriously think that even just after one episode, this is by far the best video game adaptation to screen that has ever been made. I know that might not be saying much. Video game movie/shows don't have a great track record, and people are saying, oh well, Sonic the Hedgehog did great, and Arcane and Cyberpunk. Some people say The Witcher for some reason, but as a straight up story to screen adaptation, The Last of Us is hands down the best. I really don't see any other competition. Fight me in the comments about that if you want, but after a single episode, that's all I needed to see, because this show is in ultra capable hands, and I can't wait to see what the other episodes bring, even if I'm a bit salty about the line delivery. If you're looking for a number rating for the episode, then I think this is a very solid 9.2 out of 10. If you've been watching my channel for some time, then first off, thank you. I'm sorry for this video being a little bit late. Like I said in the beginning, I just got back from vacation, but going forward, I will have a new breakdown/review episode like this coming out the very next day on Monday. So if you're new around here, welcome. And if you enjoyed this style of video and review, feel free to stay a while longer and hit that subscribe button. I've got a few other Last of Us videos on the channel already if you want to check those out. I'll leave a card for the playlist in the top right corner, and be on the lookout for more episode breakdowns in the coming weeks. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah.